I don't know if you guys heard, but in Russia, they're facing a lot of sanctions because they invaded another country, their neighbor by the name of Ukraine. And it's been not great if you're a Russian video game player, if you're somebody who relies on PayPal or transaction systems overseas. There's been a lot of ways that has been restricting the options that Russian consumers have. And one area that has been a problem has been video games. But the Russian government very much so does not trust Western media, does not trust Western movies, Western music, but that would logically extend to Western video games. If you go look at all those old Call of Duty, World at War, Modern Warfare, whatever games, what do they say? Oh, the Russians are gonna go ultra nationalist and they're gonna start wars of territorial conquest, and they're gonna start be prodding towards World War III. Ridiculous nonsense that we would never ever see in the 21st century. True propaganda. And so you don't want that type of stuff being cooked up to your citizens. And now with all these sanctions being placed on your country, now with this being this big geopolitical divide that's becoming a cultural divide, that's becoming an economic divide, that's making this rift further and further between societies, the Russians need to find ways to entertain people through movie, music, and all sorts of stuff. But young people love video games. And not even young people anymore, just that either. I mean, hey, the Russians used to play Tetris. You can go all the way back to communist times, and that has a video game legacy in that country. There are people in the 50s and 60s in Russia that play video games, just like there's people here that are 50s and 60s and play video games. And so the Russians don't want to be left out of this market or allow the West to capture all of it, dictate the type of media that they'll be consuming or producing. They're not going to dictate, of course. They could choose to or choose not to, but producing this type of content that they could be consuming, it's creating a lot of worries. It's creating a lot of worries about what the influence is having on the Russian public, the influence on the Russian economy. And there are questions about why couldn't the Russians just create their own video game systems to replace PlayStation, to replace the Nintendo Switch, to replace the Steam Deck, the Xbox, all of this. And they're going to replace it with the Tsar Station 1 or whatever. Why not? Well, I think a logical person might say, you know, the sanctions is going to make it difficult to get the computer chips that are necessary to operate these systems. Another person might point towards the fact that Russia is also in a massive labor shortage right now, leading towards people in the munitions industry massively increasing salaries by a ratio of like 200 and 300% massively to try to attract labor, and trying to do that in a new burgeoning industry where the profit the profit margins are not going to be high. You're going to be, at least at the start for sure, investing at a loss, taking it at a loss. It's a problem to get those chips in. It's a problem to get those workers. It's an even bigger problem because all of the Russians that were working at these video game companies, a lot of them has already left the country. Because when these foreign companies pulled out, that meant a lot of higher educated, wealthier Russians that knew how to work in these industries also left. So not only is there a labor shortage in Russia, there's also a labor shortage, especially within the education necessary and within the skill set necessary for the people who work in this industry. So due to the chip shortage, due to the labor shortage, and due to specifically the labor shortage within the tech industry, which has fled Russia due to all the sanctions and Western companies pulling out, not all of them, but a lot of them, it would be very, very hard to brute force a video game console into success, which, by the way, if we're going to talk about successful video game projects, that has never been done before. I mean, the Soviet Union created Tetris, but since then, where's all the, I don't know of many state successful video game projects, let alone a whole video game console. So let's read a little bit from the unbiased source, Russia Today, known for its 100% accurate, unbiased reporting on Russia, and read a little bit about this. President Vladimir Putin has instructed the government to waive requirements for organizing production of both stationary and portable game consoles in Russia, according to a statement published on the Kremlin's official website on Wednesday. Putin's order was issued following a meeting on the socioeconomic development of the Kaliningrad region. Aside from consoles, the president also called on the cabinet of ministers to consider developing a special operating system and a cloud system for delivering games and programs to users. The deadline, I love the idea of Putin like talking to Shoigu and Gerasimov and all these other, they have them all around this big table, and he's there like, yeah, so I think that the Steam platform is quite good. I like the marketplace. I think its user interface is very friendly. I think we should do something based on that. But I think when it comes to the developers, we want to make sure Russian developers get a better cut that Steam provides them. Since we are going to make this publicly funded, we can make it so that cut for the game makers are bigger, so it allows them to have more capital, and therefore it allows us to inspire more innovation, inspire more game production. Fuck off. Fuck off. He knows nothing about the industry. He knows nothing about video games. We all know the type of stuff Putin's interested in. We saw that Tucker Carlson interview where he awkwardly rambled about history and how because history book Ukraine actually belongs to Russia because Empire 1,000 years ago, he was like, why did you invade Ukraine? Well, in the year 892, when Prince Rorik took a massive dump, like it, he is not, no, he doesn't know what he's doing. Putin has no way to judge how to make these games. Maybe at the end of the day, he'll see a bad product and be able to say, that game looks like crap. That's a crap game. Maybe he'll be able to make that assessment, but he has no clue the type of investments that need to be made. Do you think any of the oligarchic elite in Russia have any idea to what foundations to set for this industry? And all the people that they would need to bring in to help them build this up are not there. At least not in the West. So there's two ways I see this going. Okay, two ways I see this going. The first way is that they do it like they do it with all of these domestic products that they're trying to replace the West in, but especially when it comes to the tech sector. Failure, failure, failure. And it's not going to go well. It's going to be a waste of money, or they're not going to do it at all, and it's just all propaganda, right? But it could be, and this also happens, oh, we're going to produce this domestically. China, do you have any video game systems we can put Putin's face on? What would stop them from doing what Soulja Boy did? We've reduced the Russians to Soulja Boy. Maybe we are too hard on them. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov explained that the president's order to consider the creation of a domestically produced console is aimed at developing Russia's native gaming industry. The Organization for Developing the Video Game Industry, RVI, presented a 5-year roadmap to the government in February that laid out an 83-point program for developing video games in Russia. RVI said this year plans to reestablish relations with various funds and organizations in international gaming that have ties to Russia and establish ways to consistently support the development of video games inside the country. The organization has also said the creation of a full-fledged game console is planned for 2026, 2027. They're giving them 2 years. 2 years? They're gonna create a video game console to compete with the Switch, with the PlayStation, with Xbox, with all in 2 years? Oh, well, now we're understanding where that optimism for a 3-day military operation came from. Anyway, continuing. Meanwhile, earlier this month, Russia concluded its first Games of the Future tournament, which took place in the city of Kazan between February 21st and March 3rd. The physical and digital format of the competition combined traditional sports and cyber sports in a unique mix in 21 combined disciplines. They include physical football, hockey, and basketball, as well as traditional cyber sports, such as drone racing, competitive programming, and robot battles. Okay, well, these are cool, but none of this has to do with making a video game system. Look, I don't care if they get help with the Chinese or not. They're not going to make a successful, they could make anything, right? Again, they could just take like 90% of what is already existent Chinese systems and then just replace 10% of it with domestic factors and say, domestic parts and say, boom. It's now the Tsargrad 1 or whatever they would want to call it. But that's not going to produce a good system. That's not going to produce a system that Russians are going to be rushing to buying, especially when Russians on average are making less money. And that's another problem that they're going to face, is that Russians, their standard of living is not going up. It's either stagnating or going down. Their savings are being whittled away by higher levels of inflation. They're spending their savings on household needs. The food prices have gone up. Egg prices aren't the only thing that have gone up. And so, are they going to have the money for this? You kicked out all the good developers. You have a labor shortage. You have a market that's not, I mean, there's people who want to play video games, but do the people have the money to buy a good system? Do you have any of the domestic ability to make this good system? Do the people making these decisions know what they're doing? And they've got a timetable of 2 to 3 years. My goodness. No Man's Sky of video game consoles we're about to see, huh? Or we'll see nothing, and this will just be an RT article that fades with time, and it'll be the magical console we mentioned just a few years ago. We'll see.